What's up, guys?
Hey everyone. Today we have a special guest with us,
What's up, guys?
our very own Colton Purvin, who we
Fellow WoW player.
mentioned earlier in some of the webisodes. And he's here today when we talk about sort of the social aspects of WoW and sort of what we learned from that. Before we go into that, we have a couple really quick announcements though about the tournament. Tournament is extremely full right now. It's at almost 190 players, so we have many backups. So we're very happy about that. Also, we have another sort of fellow high school gamer who's going to be helping us out casting the games. Mower RH
He
from
volunteered to help us out, and he lives
Yeah.
in New York. Don't know his real name, but he's a pretty cool guy, from the sounds of it.
yeah. So he'll be helping us when the tournament comes around this Friday, casting some of the games that we won't be casting. Big thanks going out to RH and him. And so that's that. So without further ado, I guess we can get into sort of the whole social aspect of WoW, because one of the reasons why WoW was such a unique game was the fact that you had to deal with people if you wanted to be successful. You couldn't really expect to get very far if you didn't really deal with the 24 other people that you need to be successful in this game.
Yeah.
And so from that, I feel like we learned a lot about sort of how to deal with people and other things like that. Colton, why don't we start with you? What do you feel is like the most unique aspect about the social realm of WoW?
All right. Well, I'd say after playing this game for like 3 years, I've come to the conclusion that around 3 out of 10 WoW players are crazy, and not just like crazy, but like literally crazy. And it just so happened that most of those crazy people tended to be the best players, and I mean at that time
Very true.
we played to win. So honestly,
to win.
To win.
we honestly had to do whatever we had to convince these people to raid, and it was not uncommon at all for me and Alex to for like till like 2 in the morning after a raid be convincing some emo 17-year-old girl, we all know who that is, to raid. And these keystone players that we relied on week after week.
They would always get in fights, and you just have to calm them down. And
Yeah, you had these really strange clashes of personalities. I
Yeah.
mean, you had these, and what really sucked was that these huge egos and these huge personalities were some of the best players that you felt that you wanted to have on your roster. So we had to go through all these leaps and bounds. And I guess I should expand on that further, why it was us going through these leaps and bounds. When we were, I guess our sort of leadership within the game started when we were as early as like 14. When we were 14, I mean, we started a new sort of section in the whole like raiding experience, and with this new dungeon, I had happened to have read up on a lot of these strategies for these bosses. So when we got to the boss, I sort of spoke up and sort of gave my strategy as to what I think would have worked, and we went and we did it, and it worked. And then after that, suddenly I was the one who was, leading these raids from that point on.
giving all those strategies for all the other boss fights.
And so what that sort of created was this really weird power dynamic. At least for me, I don't know how the other people really saw it, but for me, I was this 14-year-old kid who's now suddenly giving orders to 30-year-olds.
Right.
These late 29-year-olds, I mean, late 20s, sometimes even early 40s, these grown adults
Yeah.
being ordered around by,
With emotional problems.
us kids. Yeah, and so you had us who are these, very young kids, I mean, very sort of naive and innocent, but at the same time, getting this really crash course in what some people can be like.
Like, fast forward maturity.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I feel like, I mean, how do you guys feel like the whole maturity thing came? I mean, do you feel like
Yeah.
you became like way more
Oh,
mature?
completely. I mean, they were expecting, once we often hit our age. I mean, oftentimes we try to minimize that from.
Yeah,
Say
yeah.
you're older.
Yeah. But I mean, and the people that did find out, I mean, hey, like they were expecting immaturity. They were expecting us to be joking around, to not take it seriously, and that just compelled us all the more to try to be the best and be serious and professional about it. And that really,
Once we got into the higher rankings of the guild, I mean, it didn't really matter how old we
yeah.
were.
And
because
when you
we
became
were-
officers, it's like you're
Yeah.
expected to and stuff. But
Yeah.
And they already knew we were good.
Do you think how we sort of matured in the game had an effect on how we dealt with people outside the game?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Like, in what ways?
Well, I just feel that while we're dealing with all these emotionally insecure people, that we would kind of take what we've like developed in the game and kind of like bring it to school.
Yeah.
Like, if you had just dealt with this emotionally disturbed 17-year-old girl the night before till like 3 in the morning, saying like, "Oh, we really need you in our guild. We really want you to raid with us," and then you go see like some other people at school
Yeah.
who are
It's,
also
it's
like
sort
kind
of
of weird.
the angst kind of translates a little bit, and all
Yeah,
the
and, like,
stress.
you kind of like still have that managerial like thought
Yeah,
process.
dude,
Yeah, oh,
that's,
yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
true. When
So like when someone like says something to you, you don't automatically think like a 14-year-old or how I expect a 14-year-old to think. Like
Yeah.
you don't like insult them right back. You're like, all right, let's take a step back.
yeah,
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
analyze this. Like what can I do to quell this like confrontation?
I mean, I felt like the entire time we were the ones who were expected to be like the level-headed people, even though I mean you'd sort of
We were the
expect
youngest.
the youngest people to be the
Yeah.
least
It's the
level-headed.
adults that were raging all the time.
Yeah, so we were the ones who had to
Sorry.
keep this, this like mature demeanor through all of this. I feel like when when it got translated over to school and dealing with, people in real life sort of, you had this very exactly how Matt said, this very managerial attitude of like approaching it where you're extremely cautious on what you said and you were always saying sort of the right thing that would sort of you felt
Make
that
everyone happy.
exactly. I feel like we became far less abrasive just because we didn't want to deal with even more drama.
Mhm.
I mean, we had all this drama going on
Yeah.
in World of Warcraft, and we didn't even have drama going on
Real
in
life.
our world. But in World of Warcraft, we had
So
so
bad.
much drama that we didn't want to deal with other drama outside. So we wouldn't pick fights. We wouldn't
Yeah.
argue with people because we were just, I don't want to deal with that. I have enough of that already.
Yeah.
Oh God, I mean it's WoW and just the whole social thing. I mean, well, the next part is: do you think
Yeah. Looking at it critically.
do you think that type of like fast forward maturity is a good thing?
Oh man,
Yes and no.
pros and cons, man.
Yeah.
It's straight up. I mean, I the lessons that I learned in that game I apply right now in terms of always being on time for raids, being punctual, acting like an adult. I think it really did me a service there. But
Yeah.
I think the fact that we stopped playing, I think, was a good thing. And the fact that, like, in the sense that we learned our lessons early, but we still managed to, like, learn the social lessons that we needed to learn, going out of high school in our later years. So I think we got the best of both worlds,
Mhm.
honestly.
Yeah. I mean,
But,
on one hand, it's still a game, and we enjoyed it a ton, and we had a good time. We just messed around 25% of the time, and but then the other part really taught us how to accomplish things, like the steps you need to take. You need to put in work. You need to, like, I'm at a loss for words.
Well, just put in the time, really.
Yeah.
I mean, so, and that I mean that doesn't sum all of WoW up, but I mean that's a pretty good look at sort of what WoW was to us.
Yeah.
And looking back on it, I mean that was definitely one of the most important sort of events in my life. I mean, the WoW sort of it changed me sort of fundamentally as a person.
completely.
And this whole series talking about gaming and sort of the pros and cons and sort of introducing all the viewers to esports in general. I mean, it's such a diverse and interesting, but at the same time, it does have its shortcomings, does have its its benefits, its cool aspects. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's always a double-bladed sword here. But I mean, Matthew and I were talking about this earlier. I mean, would you do it again? Would you do the whole WoW thing again?
I think I would.
Yeah.
Honestly speaking, I think if I continued it up until this point, senior year, I don't know about that. I think
We quit at a good time.
we quit at the perfect time. I think for the adults that play and for like the older you get, I think the more that you're going to lose, but I think the lessons that it teaches are invaluable.
Now, how about so again about the social aspects? I mean, some cool parts I guess to remark on is that I mean we still know some of the people.
Friends with them on Facebook. I mean,
Yeah.
I talk to them regularly. The non-crazies, the normal
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
tend to
Yeah.
we left those behind.
Yeah. But I mean that is interesting. When we quit, I mean really sort of uh, it was pretty easy to suddenly forget about all those other people. I mean, maybe that has maybe that is a sort of a criticism of the whole thing because even though we spent such a long time sort of building these relationships and sort of you know what's the word? It's not harvesting. Harbor. I don't know. We have such a long time cultivating these relationships that suddenly we're able to drop it like that. I mean, maybe those relationships weren't as foundational or as important as we had seen them.
I mean, it's like a sports team. Honestly, it's like a sense of camaraderie when you've been spending these dozens of hours with this set group of people. You really develop lasting friendships. You feel really united. I mean, still to this day, I still talk to some of them.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so looking at the broad world of esports, I mean, WoW is definitely one of the team sort of games.
Mhm.
Almost everything you do is based off of the other people around you. And with that, we felt that sort of social dynamic, I guess, really matured us, gave us a lot more things to think about, new ways of sort of approaching problems and people. But at the same time, those relationships aren't really a good substitute for, I mean, real
Sure.
friends.
Yeah.
I mean,
Definitely.
by the end of it, we were still able to say goodbye to these people pretty easily. I mean, large majority of them. And so, I mean, there still are those criticisms of WoW. But in general, looking at the whole thing, I mean, WoW was a very informative game.
Mhm.
I think for all of us.
Yeah.
And then now, and this will sort of be the end of the WoW chapter as we then progress into what we did after WoW, which is StarCraft, which we're all still playing right now. It's a very exciting game, and we'll explain, in the future episodes why. But do you guys have anything else?
I mean, just one last thing about like the social. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but like the difference between like StarCraft players and WoW players, like psychologically in terms of like their personalities, I just think it's really interesting. Like
Yeah.
the WoW player, it's a set personality. It's a typically an insecure person who does immense compensation through their character in the game. I just think it's really
All
cool.
the StarCraft websites, especially Team Liquid, it just feels so like
Genuine.
connected
Yeah,
and
yeah.
friendly compared to the WoW scene, which is another benefit we'll talk about later in the episodes. But it was a good time.
Yeah.
When we
Totally.
quit.
Yeah, looking back, I wouldn't take it back for anything. It was a lot of fun. Okay, so 13 minutes, Jesus.
All right.
Time flies.
Thanks for joining us
Thanks
today.
tuning in, and thank you, Colton, for joining us.
No problem.
See you guys next time.